Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today is Monday, September 25th, 2023. I call this meeting to order for the land use hearing for the Board of County Commissioners in the hearing room at our Larimer County Administrative Services Building. Please join me by starting this meeting off with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for joining me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shag-McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and I welcome you again today to our land use hearing. I'm joined at the dais with my colleagues, Larimer County Commissioner Kristen Stevens and Larimer County Commissioner John Gonfalves. Also helping us with the functions of the meeting today is our clerk to the board, Tessa Beatty. Thank you, Tessa, and welcome. Appreciate your work. We also have helping us with this meeting is our Assistant County Attorney, Frank Haug, who specializes in these matters. We also have Jenny Axmaker from the Community Planning. We have our Community Planning Development Director, Rebecca Everett. We have Mr. Curry, I believe, from Community Development. And I'm sorry your name tag fell over, so I can't see your name from Engineering.
David Pringle.
David Pringle, thank you, David. Your name card, I don't know if you have one, it's fallen over, so, but thank you. No, it doesn't, okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay, so thank you all for being here today. We are here today for a land use hearing. We have several items, discussion items today. First, I want to talk about the consent agenda. We had one item on that consent agenda, Little Valley Second Filing Lot 27 amended plat, file number 22-LAND 4232. And as I understand it, that needs to be tabled into a future meeting and pulled from the consent agenda. So I just want to confirm that with you, Community Development Director Everett, if that's what we need to do today.
That is correct. Before that item can proceed to a hearing with you, a right-of-way vacation action needs to be taken. Following that action, if the right-of-way vacation is approved, then that plat can be amended. And if there are additional questions, Frank Haug with our county attorney's office can help us out.
Okay, so thank you, Rebecca. And so I won't read about what is in the consent agendas and why we have them rather pull. I'll just look for a motion, Frank, to table this item because we have no other consent agenda items.
I think that would be fine to just move to continue that one consent agenda item to I'm trying to remember the deadlines in that statute, but I think it's at least we'd need 30 days to get all the noticing out. And so I think if you could table it till end of November, I think that probably, or no, I'm sorry, end of October.
So just have one of my colleagues make that motion. Okay. So Commissioner Stevens, would you feel comfortable making that motion, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to continue the public consent hearing item, Little Valley Second Filing Lot 27 amended plat, file number 22 land 4232 to a future meeting that will happen before the end of October.
Okay. The hearing that best aligns with that timeline at the end of October would be October 23rd.
Okay.
I'll amend that
thank
motion,
you.
just say that we will have that hearing on October 23rd.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That item is now tabled to October 23rd. And now we'll move on to our discussion items. We have two discussion items. No, we have two. One we have that had been tabled, a tabled item from September 11th, 2023, and that is the Alvarado Short-Term Rental Administrative Special Review, file number 23-CONE 3505. And I think we have someone, someone from staff who's ready to present on that?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Mark Christensen from Ayers Associates here remotely.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and proceed with that presentation, Mr. Christensen, and thank you for being here.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay? Just wanting to confirm.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez,
Awesome.
can you hear him okay? Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, Mark Christensen with Ayers Associates, helping Larimer County with planning staff. So before you is the Alvarado short-term rental, case number 23-ZONE3505. Again, this item was tabled from the previous meeting and is here before you this afternoon. The subject property is located at 261 Hemlock Drive and is addressed in Lyons, Colorado with a zip code of 80540. The property is located southwest of Highway 36 in the Big Elk Meadows subdivision. The request is for the applicant for an administrative special review for approval of the existing one-bedroom single-family residence with one additional sleeping area for a maximum occupancy of 4 total guests, 2 per each bedroom/sleeping area. The applicant is David and Sherry Alvarado. The current zoning is open with a lot size of 0.55 acres. With utilities, it is the Big Elk Water Association. It has on-site septic. It is served by the Volunteer Fire Department of Big Elk and is accessed off Hemlock Drive. According to the Larimer County Land Use Code, it is zoned open, and an STR use in an open zone is classified as commercial under the commercial lodging facilities use, and is permitted after an administrative special review. With the neighbor notification, we had 145 postcards mailed to neighbors within the Big Elk Meadows subdivision. We received 8 written comments in opposition to the proposed STR, and then 6 comments in support of the proposed STR. And based off our feedback from the previous meeting, we did include the map of the approved short-term rentals in the area. As you can see here, we do have 1 approved short-term rental in the area. And this 261 Hemlock Drive is located just across the lakes here to the northwest of that property. So in reviewing the proposed administrative special review application, the director shall consider the general approval criteria found here, and then also consider the specific standards for short-term rentals. With the administrative special review, the director can approve the applications if they believe all criteria are met with no substantive issues. However, if the director believes that one or more of the criteria are not met, or it is not clear whether or not they are met, they can refer the application to the county commissioners. With that being said, the application before you meets 3 of the 5 criteria found in section 6.4.3D. Staff does not have a conclusive determination that criteria 1 or 2 of the proposed application are met. Therefore, the county commissioners have the ability to deliberate these criteria, determine whether or not the application meets these criteria. With that being said, the commissioners have the ability to either deny or approve subject to these conditions. I will note that these conditions, there are 11 conditions here. We emailed an updated memo with these 11 conditions earlier this morning, and it is also before you today. And with that being said, I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen, for your presentation. Colleagues, do you have any questions at this time from Mr. Christensen on the his presentation? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. Mark, thanks for your presentation. Could you clarify, I think it has been, but the initial application from the Alvarados was for a 2-bedroom additional unit up to 5 guests, and we now know it's different. It's up to 4 guests. But I wonder, what happened throughout that process? Because I think one of the areas for the guests was a loft situation, which our building official determined would not be allowable for this purpose because of the dimensions of that loft. So I wonder, Mark, if you could just provide a little bit more clarification about how that process unfolded and why did we start out with 5, and I think we're all in agreement 4, how that went down.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to Commissioner Kafalis. The reason that additional bedroom, the building division noted that it was not of adequate size to serve as an additional bedroom. So with that being said, they were not able to have a full qualifying bedroom. Therefore, they weren't permitted to have 5 guests. That moved it down to 4. With each additional sleeping area, it does permit 2 guests. So they have 1 full bedroom, 1 additional sleeping area for a total of 4 guests, since that did not qualify as a bedroom.
Madam Chair, may I continue?
Yes, please, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. The second question I have at this time is, can you tell us? I think one of the issues that came up in some of the input we received from the neighbors was the proximity of this particular home in relation to the neighbors. What is the distance between this house that is being considered for a short-term rental and neighbors on either side or across the way?
Yes, Chair, through you to Commissioner Kafalis. Just pulling up a map real fast. But in general, the lot sizes are noted to be approximately, they're about half an acre lots. So with that being said, the sites are a little bit closer to one another. I'm just pulling up the GIS to get some lot dimensions in that area for you.
And I appreciate that, Mark. I raised the question in part because noise is often an issue, and if the neighbors are relatively close, I just want to understand that a little bit better. And
Yeah, let's see here.
and I recognize that is one of the conditions of approval is to abide by the county noise ordinance. We we can move on. I don't want to hold things up.
Chair, through you to Commissioner Kafalis. So to the neighbors on either side, it does appear that the home is within, it looks to be about 200 feet with the neighbor to the northeast, and then other neighbors, it appears that it is within about 200 feet to the other neighbors as well. So they are a little bit closer together. One neighbor appears to be within 100 feet as well.
Mark, thank you very much for that information. Thank you. I think I'm okay
Yes.
for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a question for staff. We have once again another property manager who lives outside of the hour of response time. And it's not just a minute. This time it's 8 to 10 to 11 minutes, and I Googled and mapped it. And that's on, a busy time. I have a really deep concern. We are allowing, this was a condition we had talked about, that I would think that it's not just that you have to live with an hour, you have to be able to respond. And so I have a deep concern about having this once again as an application, having this being outside the hour window. Even though it's the old code, this is still a concern to me.
Chair, through you, if I may.
Yeah.
So today, I have been in discussions with the applicant. They are willing to, they have a handyman located in the city of Longmont. I'll go ahead and share what that address would be, but they're willing to condition their application on the condition that they would list this as the property manager, and they are within a 41-minute drive of the proposed STR.
So a property manager is a property manager and should be able to be responsive 24/7, 365. So is that individual agreeing to being available 24/7, 365, or that would be considered a violation?
That
Chair, through you, I will let the applicant speak to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to point that out. I really have concerns about that condition being pushed to the limit there. So just for future reference. So, colleagues, do you have any other questions? Okay. So we'll move on now, at least for the moment, to have the applicant present, and the applicant would get 10 minutes, and then we'll have public comment, and then you'd have 5 minutes for rebuttal. So if the applicant would like to come forward to the podium, identify yourself, you'd have 10 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, thank all of you for spending your time here today. I really appreciate it. For both those in favor and opposed that are watching, I think good communication and problem solving is the key to good outcomes. How do I proceed through the PowerPoint? Is there a clicker?
I think if you just insert staff, that
I'm controlling the presentation, so if you just want to let me know, me know when you're ready to switch slides. I'll go.
Okay, thank you. First, I'll just present a PowerPoint of some key points here. First of all, my wife and I own this property. My wife Sherry, she's in the red there. My daughter on the right is a person that's very involved in community service and is currently in fire mitigation, which is proving to be very helpful given the area that we are in. I get a lot of great information from her, and a lot of the passion spills over into some actions. Next one, please. When we first moved into the community last summer, I've got a passion for firefighting and fire service. One of the things that I did was I asked if it was possible that if I could do something for the community and specifically the volunteer fire department. And so I'm a small business owner, and one of the things we do is do industrial coatings to concrete. And so there's 5 bays in the fire station, and we donated at no cost a complete resurfacing of one of the 5 bays in hopes to down the road also continue that progress. Next slide, please. This is our little cabin. It's very small and beautiful spot for us, and it's a place that we migrate to often and enjoy the peace and quiet for sure. Next. The size of it, as Mark had mentioned, it's and clarifies that it is going to be presented as a 1-bedroom, 1-bath property with a maximum occupancy of 4 people. It's probably more suited, and I'm going to would be much happier with 2 people renting this place, but it does have a maximum occupancy of 4. I will be promoting the cabin to those who are seeking peace and quiet and looking to get away from the noise. I think there is an enormous demand for that given today's craziness, and it's nice to be able to sit on the deck and enjoy the sound of wind blowing through the trees. And I believe I can be very successful in seeking out those people and making that the primary visitor. Average stays for most of these short-term rentals is a couple days. I'm also making that as a 2-day minimum in my description. I think that will help and keep out people that are just looking for, as they're driving by, and going to be a quick stop in the neighborhood. I'd rather enjoy people that plan on being here. I'm also going to develop a list of repeat customers and specifically repeat outstanding guests based on feedback that I have and information during their stay. And I will try to promote those people to come back. Another nice benefit is this does provide available lodging for people in our neighborhood. Most of the places in the neighborhood are small, and people have guests, they have family in, and the closest lodging is probably 30 minutes away. It's a great resource for people that live in the neighborhood who may not have the space or would be much happier if they could have an alternative space for their guests and family to stay on occasion. Last thing is on this page is there absolutely will be no smoking allowed on my property or open fires allowed. That's part of the covenants in the HOA as far as open fires, and that's going to be the rules in my rental as well. Next page. Quiet hours are going to be 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. These rules will be communicated not only in the property description, but in a confirmation email that will be posted at the cabin and also in the operations manual. This, to me, I know it's a critical point to people in the neighborhood. It's very important and very critical to me as well. If you sit up there on the deck and are enjoying the quiet, you want that to be as frequent as possible. It's nice to be able to hear a car from a ways away, and all you hear is the gravel crunching into their tires. And it's very easy to hear geese landing in the lake, kids laughing, at the other end of the neighborhood. That's absolutely what I want to do, everything possible to preserve. Next. Fishing. I do live in front of a lake, and there are a series of 5 lakes in the neighborhood. There is some limitation on what owners are able to keep and what guests are able to keep, and that varies from one lake to the other. My regulation and my rules for my guests, I'm just going to make it simple. All fishing is catch and release, if the guests even want to fish. And that way there's just no question as to which lake or how many. It's just 100% catch and release, period. These rules and guidelines will be communicated in the property description, the email confirmation that we post at the cabin, and also in the operations manual. Water usage. Water usage is as with anywhere, is a precious resource. I do pay for every gallon that I use, and I'm going to encourage smart water usage with my guests. That being said, our neighborhood currently, the last quarter, has used an all-time record low in water, so we're doing some things right. I think we could always do things a little bit better, but I have a very small place, and I believe that there's going to be a very minimal amount of water being used. The water that is being used, I will be paying for. Another item, if you could back up just one, please, thank you. Also, with part-time occupancy, even in busy seasons, part-time occupancy means part-time water use, which means less water used overall in comparison to a full-time resident. Next, thank you. One of the concerns has been the speed limit in the area. We have dirt roads. The speed limit is 10 miles an hour. That's a very slow speed. It's you can almost walk 10, or at least it feels like it sometimes. It's hard to understand that, I think, in most areas, and I believe, quite often even homeowners will be driving up and down. I've caught myself sometimes going over 10 and immediately back down. So I think visual reminders are important. It's enjoyable driving 10 miles an hour, at least from my point of view, in our neighborhood. This sign is not a neighborhood sign. This sign is posted at the front of my driveway as a reminder that these roads are a slow speed and for a purpose. This speed limit is going to be posted again in the confirmation in the cabin and the operation manual, and I'm very passionate about doing what I can to make sure that people are aware of that. Next, please. Trash disposal is another concern that neighbors have had. I have made some. We have a centralized compactor towards the front of the neighborhood. Some of the neighbors have voiced concerns about trash being left out or available for left on the ground or not taken out. So I've made a very clear map on exactly how to put your trash away upon your exit. Again, part-time trash equals less trash overall, which I think is good overall in comparison to full-time.
Mr. Alvarado, I just want to pause you real quick.
Yeah.
You have only about 10 seconds left in your 10 minutes, so I just wanted to see if you wanted to get to your, because you'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal, so I just want to kind of be fair. We try to keep these presentations consistent, so I paused the timer, but I just wanted you to maybe get to your wrap-up slide and wrap up your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next. Service providers are available to our residents as well as full-time residents. Next slide, please. Final thoughts. Larimer County regulations are strict and specific for good reason. Our cabin is required to have fire extinguishers, automatic fire suppression with a stove, egress maps, and emergency information. I'd like to provide lodging options for guests and family of neighbors. My goal is to attract nature-loving, respectful guests and repeat customers. However, many nights will be owner-occupied. Owners are currently we as the owners are currently invested in the community and plan to be full-time residents in the future.
Thank you.
Next slide.
And I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you. We're way over
Yes.
like a minute, so thank you for your presentation. Okay, colleagues, do you have any questions currently for Mr. Alvarado? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Alvarado. I'm wondering, the Big Elk Meadows is a very unique area. I think it might be 5 miles away. Correct me if I'm wrong. From Highway 36, and apparently, in reading through the material, I learned that it's a gated community, or at least it was intended to be a gated community without a gate at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that it's very unique, and the two general review criteria that are in question are the first one, criterion 1, the proposed use has minimal impacts on existing and future development of the area, and of course, criterion 2. Any impacts associated with environment, wildlife, traffic, all of those things. I wonder if you could, sir, speak to how you feel like you're addressing these two criteria, which are the ones that are in question. One being regarding minimal impact. Why do you think that your proposed short-term rental has minimal impact on the unique quality or character of that community, and also some of the other things? I know you've addressed the wildfire issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to be updating your operations manual regarding wildlife and things of that nature.
Yep.
Am I making any sense, sir? And if so,
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yep. So one of the things that's beautiful about the neighborhood is the evenings, and light pollution is important to consider. It's hard to understand that until you're in it, until you're looking outside and seeing nothing but stars. It's an important thing to be aware of and figure out a way to learn how to turn off your lights when you're not used to that. I have installed on our exterior lights. We do have some motion lights that are just on for 10 seconds at a time, but on our main front and rear lights to the cabin, I've installed Wi-Fi operated switches to where I can turn off the lights from my phone, and I'm going to have signage on the lights switches themselves, reminding occupants to do so as well in the evening. But if I see that they're on, I can turn them off with my phone. I think that's really important, and to address the light pollution issue. I've also put gravel underneath my deck, and intend to be creative in ways to do whatever possible to reduce any chances of fire. Obviously, one is to not allow any smoking, and having items that are not able to be burned near the cabin, I think, is another one. I've also purchased a meter that will record sound levels, and I'm not sure. There's a lot of them out there, and I might have to buy several until I find one that I think is effective to monitor the sound levels. We also have video cameras posted on the exterior of the cabin, so I am able to see some of the goings on, and if there is a problem, be able to respond to it. One additional item is I do have several people, a total of 3 at this point, full-time residents in the neighborhood that have came to me and said they would be happy to handle and respond to anything that I may have if they were at home. They ask that I do not provide their names, and I respect that. And they have suggested their neighbors, and they are the one that came to me to suggest that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your
welcome.
Your responses. And one of my follow-up questions was regarding the sound sensor devices, and it appears that you've already purchased one to install.
Yes.
That would, if we're exceeding the decibel levels, so that's a plus. And I also want to acknowledge that you did pass the wildfire home ignition zone inspection. There were some recommendations in terms of mitigating, wood piles and vegetation right adjacent to the house. So that is being responsive. One last question regarding the operator's manual.
Yes.
There were a number of suggestions offered by our planning division. Are those updates to the operator's manual in effect, or are they in process? There were some recommendations about changing, putting in certain information that's not already there.
Yeah, there were some changes due to the size of our occupancy that was reduced. I'm in the process of getting those to the building department. There was egress directions and whatnot that I provided for this loft/storage area, and apparently I do not have to provide. It was in a little different format than what they needed.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Alvarado, I see that you changed who is going to be your property manager to a handyman that lives closer, because it is
Yes.
important. I'd like to, if we say an hour, it should be under an hour. It shouldn't
Absolutely.
be over. And this is one individual. So what are you going to do? This is supposed to be 24/7 and someone who can respond within an hour. So what is your backup?
My backup is the 3 individuals in the neighborhood, full-time residents, and I would imagine that a backup to the property manager in Longmont. I've got a neighbor that's very close by. Three neighbors specifically, and those 3 individuals. So I would have 3 backups in addition to myself.
So, so this is something that I have a concern about because this is supposed to be listed on the website. So if someone has a complaint, they can call into our complaint system, and there should be a listed person for the property manager, as I understand. And so if they don't know who it is or who to call, or if there's this delay, you understand this could lead to you having a violation if you do not, if you get this approval. That if someone doesn't respond in the appropriate time, and it seems a little confusing to not know who's going to be responding at certain times when you have backups that you can't name who those are, who the neighbors are. So I'm just curious, have you thought about that?
I have a little bit, and I'm not, I guess I need a little bit of clarity on how I get the contact information. My neighbors, my immediate neighbors, have my name and phone number and email. And my name is also in the neighborhood directory along with my contact information. I'm happy to post that in wherever is the most strategic and convenient place for people. I'm also happy to go and have face-to-face conversations with my neighbors all the way down the street, and make a business card and give them a card to contact.
Maybe I'll have staff explain what we have in place. Is we have a system where people who have a complaint, they can file a noise complaint or a complaint online, and it goes to Rebecca, you want to explain that? Because I think it's important for people to know it's not just calling you. That we have a system so that we can make sure you have or your property manager have responded. So if you get this license, so I think it's important to understand it's not just having your friend drive up or your neighbor walk over and saying be quiet. That there is an expectation that this will be reported, that you will be logging in that you have responded to that complaint. So,
Absolutely.
Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind explain that just real quick, because I'm not sure if I have exactly, because we have this new enforcement system. I want to make sure everyone's clear about that.
Sure. On our website, there is a 24/7 hotline number that individuals can call anywhere in the county if they have a complaint about a short-term rental at any time. We also have a map published on our website of approved short-term rental licenses where you can click on the individual property and it'll list the contact information for the property manager if somebody wants to contact the property manager specifically. And the code requires one individual to be identified as a property manager. The code does not require any backups. And in fact, it's a little confusing within our systems if we have multiple people identified. So from a staff perspective, with the change in property manager to the handyman in Longmont, that satisfies the code requirement from staff's perspective. And then as mentioned, if there is a complaint and there is not a response to the property or it's not resolved within an hour, then that would be noted as a violation tagged onto that license.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just always want to make sure people are clear that it has to be responded within the hour, and that I always think that if you have one person, I know that's in the code, but still that person happens to be down in Denver at that time, having dinner at a game, that might prove to be a challenge. So just kind of want to be clear that people understand.
Absolutely, I agree with that importance, 100%. And that's why I was happy to have additional people that are actually in the neighborhood full time, as backups, as you say. But I figured it's best to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, if at all possible.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Rebecca, for helping clarify that, because we are kind of moving into that new enforcement area. So I think that's all the questions I have, unless my colleagues have more questions. If not, then we'll go ahead and go into public comment. And then if we have public comment, you'll have a 5-minute time period for rebuttal.
Okay.
I mean, you might have further questions. I'm not sure. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and thanks to the applicant for answering our questions. So now I just wanted to see, I see we have one person signed up for public comment. I'm assuming that person is in the room. And so I will ask Ms. Toria DeVore to come up and identify yourself, and you will have 3 minutes for public comment.
Thanks. I'm Tori DeVore. I'm a resident at Big Elk Meadows, a neighbor of David and Sherry, who I like a lot, by the way. But I'm here to talk a little bit about Big Elk Meadows. As you mentioned, it's a very unique community, about 160 homes, approximately 50, I could have that number wrong, are full-time residents. We were devastated by the 2013 flood. Only recently have finally, as you asked, we finally got our gate back up. It's not working very well. We're having some technical difficulties, but our community's worn out. Our HOA, like many HOAs, is slightly dysfunctional. There's volunteers, but the uniqueness of our community with the addition of having our own water treatment facility and water rights to deal with really taxes our HOA and our volunteers. And a lot of the community that I've talked to that's concerned about STRs is any STRs, not necessarily the Alvarados or anything like that, but how many? And we feel that bringing in transients into our community presents threats to us, dangers. We don't know these people. We've dealt with this for quite a while. We have people who come in and poach on our property. They come up and drive up and use our dumpster and put stuff into our dumpsters. We have fees there. So we're very concerned about strangers in our community. And so we all have this habit of waving to everybody when we go by. When people are fishing, we'll check. We always have our badges on the backs of our hats, and if we don't, we'll respectfully ask, hey, and they might be a guest. We'll ask that they go get it. So there's a lot of concern about bringing transients into the community. So when I kind of ran the numbers, I found that a cabin with four people can bring in about 100 to 150 people into our community that we don't know. So what we want to ask the county to do is kind of watch our density. I mean, be careful. How many of these are we going to allow? And I know there's a 500-foot rule, but even that would be devastating. We don't have the infrastructure to manage it, and the owners have left. Right, they're off in their properties within an hour away, or they have their property managers. But we're still the ones have to report it and have to deal with it. The dust is a real problem. That dust is actually a pollutant. So we pay to have that road base put down. So the 10 mile an hour is not just to keep our turkeys safe so you don't run over one of them, but it's also to make sure that that dust doesn't get up into the trees. So it's not so much, it might be 5 miles an hour on a dry, windy day. So it's more about the dust. I like Dave's sign, by the way. It was nice. So our community is more concerned about with STRs in general. I don't necessarily have any beef with the Alvarados. They've done a lot of work to try and make us feel safe and everything, but it's more in general. And like I said, it's the extra traffic from transients and vacationers and overusing the facilities that vacationers tend to have a different habit.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for public comment. Okay, I will open it up to anyone online. Is there anyone who's online that would like to raise their hand for public comment?
Yes, we have several attendees online. I will just provide some instructions to those who are either calling in or viewing this meeting through Zoom. If you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand button that should be on your Zoom control bar. And let me confirm, if you are calling in, I believe you press *6 to raise your hand. And I see that we've got at least one person who's called in. We currently have one hand raised, so we could start with Mr. Wright, Eric Wright.
Okay.
And then see if other hands get raised after
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Rebecca. So, Mr. Wright, this is Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shabik, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for raising your hand and engaging in public comment. If you could please mute yourself, state your name, where you're from. You'd have 3 minutes for public comment. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you for the time. Again, my name is Eric Wright. I live in Castle Rock, Colorado, and we purchased our place up in Big Elk Meadows not too long after the Alvarados, it sounds. It was fall of last year. I have 4 children, so we come up there, and this was the dream, right? To share this unique community with our neighbors and with our children. And so in my time over the last year, I've gotten to know David and had some great conversations with him. And I can tell through my conversations that he just, I mean, we haven't gone out and hung out outside of the meadows by any means, but we're neighbors enough. And I feel like I've gotten a good idea of how he intends to run this operation. And I just believe I guess what I wanted to convey is that he would have my blessing. We live only actually a couple doors down from David, and I would back him in his proposal that he shared today, and also put myself as a contact for him in confirmation of what he said. I know I'm not there full time, but also just to add as another backup to the backup, if you will. I do think it's a unique community. I love it. My kids are having memories that we'll have. I mean, even in just the first year, it's hard to share how much it's meant to us. And I know that we can share that space as long as everyone's doing it with care and with rules and clear communication. And I believe that David has conveyed to me in person what that plan would be, because, of course, as a neighbor, I wanted to know what that would look like. But also here today, I think he's done a good job of communicating that. So just wanted to go on the record of being someone that would be in his corner in that regard.
Thank you, sir, for your public comment.
Thank you.
Okay, we have anyone else, Rebecca?
We do not currently have any other hands raised, so I'll put, one just went up, and I'll put in a last call as well for anyone else who would like to make a comment who's watching over Zoom. And so next up, we have Alex Jacobson.
Hello, Mr. Jacobson. This is Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shabignelli, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for wanting to engage in public comment. If you would please unmute yourself, identify yourself, where you're from, and you would have 3 minutes for public comment. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you, everyone. Yep, Alex Jacobson here. We've got a second home in Big Elk Meadows at 731 Hickory, so right across the lake from David. We were the first, I think we're the first and only STR in Big Elk Meadows. And, we went up there and we bought that property for the same reasons, to keep the quiet enjoyment. And so we work really hard to screen all of our guests. We have certain criteria that we abide by. We don't rent to people under 30. I just want to say that we're really careful about who we rent to. But everyone has been great. We've had no complaints from the neighbors. And, I think I've met David. I think he's going to keep the same kind of level of professionalism that the Jacobsons has kept. And we really love it up there. We don't want it to become a tourist attraction. And I don't know if this holds any weight, but I understand that the rules for short-term rentals has changed in Larimer County, and the application fee has increased. And that has brought down the number of applicants significantly, even maybe to 0. I don't know if that's true. Maybe you guys can speak on that. But I would think that, if the bar is set pretty high for future applicants, that, there might only be a few short-term rentals in Big Elk Meadows. So I just want to say we appreciate everything you do in maintaining the high standards of short-term rentals. And we hope that we're a good example of how it can be good for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson, for your public comment. Do we have anyone else?
We do not have any other hands raised.
Okay, so I want to just open it up to anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment. Okay.
So my name is Corey Jacobson.
Could you wait till you get to the mic, please? Thank you.
So my name is Corey Jacobson. I'm going next. And it's completely different Jacobson than what you just saw out there. But I figure I'd jump in. I met David about a month ago, probably. He's been a great guy to talk to, great resource to get information from on all this. He and I just signed up for a subcommittee on the HOA to talk about short-term rental rules for Big Elk Meadows in the future. And I think we're going to do good. And that's all I got.
Thank you for your public comment. So one more last call. Okay, then I'm closing public comment. Thank you. Rebecca, would you like to address really quickly that we are just arbitrarily raising short-term the fees for this? This is to cover the cost to the county for staffing and things, just to, since that comment was made, just to kind of, this is not arbitrary. These are, basically, we're trying to cover how much staff time and all this, the cost for the county for processing all these.
Yeah, I can note a couple items that may be responsive to that public comment. One is that we did have a fee increase that went in, that took effect, that partially took effect at the beginning of this year, 2023. And half of that fee increase was implemented. The other half of the fee increase will be implemented in 2024. That was across the board for all development application types and processes, and followed a comprehensive fee study on, as you stated, Madam Chair, the cost recovery for the services that are provided by the community development and engineering departments during the development review process. So fees on several application types did increase, but it was not specifically tied to short-term rentals. We did have a recent change in the codes and the regulations that relate to short-term rentals that took effect June 1st of this year. That does set the bar higher for short-term rentals in several ways: engineering standards, some of the planning standards, separation requirements, things like that. So that we do anticipate that will have an effect on the number of short-term rentals that are proposed countywide in the future.
Thank you, Rebecca, for covering that. I know, I remember that. Thank you for reminding the public too that this wasn't just on short-term rentals, this was across the whole department. So appreciate that. So now that we've closed public comment, and I had that addressed, colleagues, do you have any questions for the staff or the applicant? Are we ready for deliberation?
I think there's a rebuttal.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you. I forgot we had one in opposition. So Mr. Alvarado, you would have 5 minutes for public comment. If you'll come up and address, you'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. As Corey, who just spoke, mentioned, I was at my wife and I at the board, the monthly board meeting with our HOA just this last week, and during that meeting we spoke briefly about short-term rentals and different concerns. I signed up, as well as Corey, to be a part of this committee to provide real and ongoing information and flow and problem solving. I'm a very detailed oriented person. I feel like I'm very creative at finding solutions. And maybe some of those solutions, have yet to even be discovered, or mitigation of some potential problems. And it's my belief that it's an ongoing process of improving. I'm not here to just strictly meet the minimum requirements of Larimer County. I feel like that as time goes on, my own personal guidelines and learnings from short-term rental will increase the likelihood of having, very good tenants, very good experience with not only the people that are visiting in my home, but also in the neighborhood. My wife and I are both volunteers at the volunteer fire department in Big Elk Meadows. My wife is a registered nurse, has had decades of experience in emergency medicine and burn unit and critical care patients. She's actually considering getting her paramedic certification for no other reason than to provide an additional resource and service for our community. If anybody were to tell me I'm not community related or we're not community related, I would challenge them any day of the week. And it's not a short-term thing. It's a long-term thing. We plan on living up there full-time in the future as well. And we also plan on continue to develop relationships with our neighbors, even our neighbors that are opposed to my application. I think with talk and communication, we can develop those relationships, make it a strong community, and overall make it a good experience for everyone.
So you have another minute. Is that your rebuttal time?
Yes,
Okay, thank you so much.
thank you.
Okay, so we will close rebuttal time. Okay. Thank you, colleagues, for helping me catch that. So now, do you have any questions? Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I have a question for the applicant. Sorry to make you sit down and then come back up, but just had a question. So I know you gave a response to, a written response to the applicant responses. Have you had a chance to have conversations with your neighbors that have been opposed, and how did those conversations go? And were you able to satisfy some of their concerns, or do you feel like there's things up in the air? What have those
Yes,
conversations look like?
yes, thank you for that. I have, and I had a nice conversation with Tori. She was at the board meeting last week as well, and I had a nice conversation with her afterward. I am pretty certain that she has confidence in me as a person, as a member of the community, and how not only I go about my business, but my wife, my kids, and being a part of the community and listening. I think that's sometimes people hear you, but they don't listen, and I feel like I do very good at listening. And then taking what I hear and trying to resolve those issues. I have also spoke to several other neighbors who opposed it, and in those conversations, I'm just being forthright with them. I'm just letting them know what my stance is, different ways that I plan on going about being a part of the community still, and also trying to line up multiple people as alternatives if there is an issue, to where it can be resolved fully and quickly.
And then another question that Tori brought up was, the water rights and the water treatment. Like that's a very. It sounds like there's some limited resources. So, can you just address that piece in particular, since Tori is here and she brought that up?
Absolutely. Water is precious, and it's we are having a great water year right now. The whole state is, and so our place is a very small. It's a one bath cabin. We don't have a bathtub. We have a shower only, and there's limited hot water available. So, in a very small shower, it's not a luxurious, stretch out and jump in the bathtub type of place. It's a very small place that kind of discourages heavy water use. I'm definitely going to plan on putting signs in the cabin that says, "Please be wise and water conscious." Um, Again, a lot of it's reminders, visual reminders of letting people absorb and understand where they're at, and giving them a different mindset. And I think that's important, just as anything else. And um, the water use in the neighborhood again is at the all-time low. In fact, at the board meeting, kind of jokingly but also seriously, they said, "Neighbors, please use more water, because the water in the holding tanks is getting old, and we need to get more water going through those tanks." And that was from the operations guy who manages the water. Um, and he was kind of jokingly saying that, but being real at the same time. So I understand that's not going to be there every single year, but that's where it's currently at.
Thank you. And then last question. About the swimming pool privileges, can you remind me what? I think you addressed that in your letter to the residents, but
Yes, we have a swimming pool. It's a heated swimming pool exterior in the neighborhood. It's only open and operating for a very short time during the summer. It usually gets started late in the summer. It's usually in operation by the 4th of July, and then it shuts down typically around Labor Day. Sometimes, and then at different days it won't operate at all because if the temperatures aren't high enough, they don't open it up and heat the water just to conserve. There is a access badge that you can use to get into the pool area. And the pool regulations and rules are posted there, and they're also going to be posted in my operations manual.
thank you. And I just thought of one more question. I apologize. So with the committee for the short-term rental rules, that's obviously a concern that the neighbors. I mean, we've seen some concerns about short-term rentals in general in some of the comments that we've heard, and we also had someone who said, you know, they would like the county to explore a cap in this neighborhood on short-term rentals. And so, tell me just a little bit about the formation of that committee and the concerns that you heard at the meeting when you were forming that subcommittee.
Yeah, and it's in its kind of infancy, this committee. But some of the concerns were of big corporations who to buy a home and are not present. They're not owner occupied, so to speak. And they aren't involved in the community. They don't know what it looks like. They're just out to rent it 31 days a month. And some of the other concerns were, you know, if this were to eventually transition into a large percentage of the neighborhood becoming short-term renters, that loses that community feel, and I agree 100%. There was a number mentioned at the meeting of no more than 30% of the neighborhood short-term rentals. Honestly, I'm thinking that's way high, and I think having a few short-term rentals is going to be a great service for the neighborhood in many ways. But I believe 30% is substantially is high. I think it should be much less than that, and I am 100% in favor of putting a cap on something.
And can you just remind me? I think that the HOA does allow short-term rentals. It's specifically spelled out that the HOA does allow them in this area. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it actually went out to a vote to the members of the community several years ago, and it was voted to allow short-term rentals.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kofalis.
Well, thank you. I didn't necessarily have any questions. However, I'm wondering if there's a way to get clarification on the last statement regarding the HOA approving, allowing for short-term rentals to be in the neighborhood. There seems to be, looking at body language and all the rest, there seems to be a little bit of a difference of opinion. Any thoughts there, Mr. Alvarado?
Yeah, there seems to be some very cloudy communication within the HOA as to a number of items, not just this. Some people were in the understanding that short-term rentals were not allowed, and some have appropriately pointed out that yes, they are currently allowed, and it had gone to vote, and then obviously at the board meeting last week, this committee was formed to try to figure out a way to address and make rules and regulations so it fits well in the community and hopefully restrict the number.
Thank you, sir. If I may just pivot to staff for a moment, presuming that the HOA, if the HOA did not allow short-term rentals in this community, then that in the covenant would supersede any decision that the county could make.
That's something that we generally stay out of, and I think I'll pass it over to our county attorney, Frank Haug, to elaborate on the reasons why.
Excuse me. We do not enforce private HOA covenants. And so if there's a private HOA covenant that restricts that, we don't go to court to try to enforce that. The HOA would have to go to court on its own to enforce that. However, to the extent that there is a provision like that, and you believe it's relevant to the impact on the neighborhood, you could do that. But what's important to understand is that whether there is or is not an HOA prohibition, that's something the HOA needs to enforce on its own. We don't enforce private HOA covenants.
Thank you, Frank. That explanation is helpful. Yes. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Okay, so any committees or anything that they're doing to make new rules, that's not our purview either, so.
We don't control the HOA.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I think that's all I have for right now. We'll have chat and sit down. Thank you. Okay. Colleagues, are we ready to deliberate? Commissioner Gonzalez, would you like to start?
Yes. So thank you all. Right up front, I will state that I can support this short-term rental application, and I will attempt to explain my rationale for that. First of all, the public comment, and I think Ms. Tori DeVore, Torey, Tory, oh Tori. I'm doing that to help our person who's taking notes, and DeVore is Devore. Very good. So first of all, I want to, in explaining my decision to support this short-term rental application with the 11 conditions that have been listed. One, I want to totally acknowledge the public comment, and I believe Ms. Torey with one eye, DeVore, was actually here last time we were going to do this, and appreciate your ability to to be back and express your opinion. I think you've raised valid points about density and concerns that neighbors may have about folks who are not part of the neighborhood and strangers, and whether that raises public safety concerns. So I think all of that is very valid. I certainly appreciate the folks online who offered their comments in support generally, and a willingness to provide backup, and also the written comment that we received. I think 145 or so notices went out, and we did get 8 or so responses via email, I believe. So that's important to acknowledge the public comment, absolutely, and that helps inform our decisions. And in this case, ultimately, we base our decisions on the 5 general review criteria, and the 2 in question, of course, one dealing with the character of the area, the uniqueness of the area. It's good to know that the gate is back up, sort of, and have to work through that. But that's criterion 1, and it seems to me that Mr. Alvarado and his family are doing their best to be responsive of that. They're not, they're part of that community, and I think that's been expressed. The willingness to volunteer and serve, and also I think it's very proactive that there's a subcommittee that's been formed to look at some of the bigger issues related to short-term rentals. So I think, in my view, based on the discussion and based on the written information, I think indeed we have met that criterion 1, the general review criteria. The second one deals with more specific impacts related to, for example, noise. And I believe I heard, sometimes my hearing is not always 100%. I heard that the operations manual will be updated to say that the quiet time is 7 p.m. to 7. Well, actually, I thought Mr. Alvarado said 9 a.m., and our requirement is 7 a.m., so we're adding a couple of hours on there. I thought I heard that there would be installation of a sound sensor device to if there is exceeding the noise levels, then you would be informed through that technology. So I feel like you're being responsive to that. On the matter of traffic, it was an interesting insight from Ms. DeVore about it's not just to make sure we don't run over the wild turkeys that may be running around, but there also is a very valid issue around dust suppression and all of that. So I think that based on the discussion, the fact that when there are guests, you pay an extra fee, and that goes into the infrastructure, and that would help with road maintenance and all of that. So I feel like there's been responsiveness to that. And then, on the water issue, that's always a critical issue, and it looks like there will be mitigation measures taken to ensure that guests understand the importance of using water wisely and conserving. So I believe that those 5 criterion have been met, in addition to the short-term rental regulations related to that, related to life safety issues and all of that. That is why I can support this this application with the 11 conditions of approval. Thank you for listening to me. Sorry if I got a bit long-winded.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would also be in support of this, and I appreciate Tori for coming out, and appreciate all the neighbors who wrote in about some of their concerns. I feel like a lot of the concerns have been addressed. I actually would like, as a condition of approval, to just require that noise monitor situation. We've required this for other, and since it seems like noise carries in this area, maybe even more than it does in other areas, I think that would be a condition of approval that I'd like to add, and I would hope that I see Commissioner Gonzalez nodding, and we'll let Commissioner Shattuck McNally speak about it when it's her turn. But I feel like there's a lot of mixed messages, and I'm glad your community actually will be having a short-term rental meeting, because I think that having some rules, or because it seems like there's quite a few people that are supportive, and then there's some people that aren't supportive, and so it's hard to get a sense from just a small handful of people where majority of the community stands, and I just would say to Tori and other people who were in opposition that that they have to, that they have to follow these rules, and if they don't follow these rules, it's a 3 strikes and you're out. So I would say, as neighbors, make sure you hold them to the standards that are out there for this short-term rental, because we don't. By agreeing to this, they're saying they will follow these rules, and that they will make sure that they're holding their guests accountable. So if they're not, there is a way to address that, and ultimately they would lose their license to be able to have a short-term rental. So I do have some concerns about the water supply issue. So I guess I would just say make sure that's really you're definitive about that in your guidebook, that it's a valuable resource, and that the community is responsible for providing a lot of those resources. And so I would just kind of want to highlight that piece, because that's a concern across the county, not just in this area. But like Commissioner Gonzalez says, I feel like in looking at the review criteria, that the owner and applicant has met the criteria, or talked about ways to mitigate some of the concerns that neighbors have. I don't know this to be true, but I'm assuming that because you had conversations that we didn't hear from many people today, even though we got quite a few emails that were in opposition. We also got quite a few that were in support. So there again, it's tricky, and I commend the Big Elk Meadows for kind of diving deeper into this and saying, this is what we want in our community, and this is how we want to regulate short-term rentals in our community. 30% does seem high, and so good luck with those conversations. That's up to you as a community to decide, but I will be voting in support of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. I have a lot of concerns about this. I feel like when the public comment brought up water issues and Mr. Alvarado had his rebuttal, he didn't even really address the opposition's response. He didn't even talk to water unless Commissioner Stevens had prompted him with her questions. And so I'm concerned about if they're here, if they really mean what they're saying, or they're just here to try to get approval. And so I find it a very great interest that most of the people that spoke in support of the opposite of the short-term rental today are going to be short-term rental owners themselves. And now they're on the committee to make the rules for short-term rentals for the community. And that's a concern. We do have other neighborhoods that are remote, as this in Larimer County, who have a water system and have to pump in water, and the residents have to volunteer and do this. And I know that has not gone well. Continues not to go well, and I have concerns about the water. I didn't hear from the applicant any ideas about, he says, a great water year. It was a wet year, but we are still considered to be in a drought, in my opinion. And if there is a drought year and conditions, are different, and I was hoping to hear a plan about further conservation, or maybe not renting as much in a year that has water concerns if the system is down or having trouble. And I appreciate the wildfire mitigation, but and you can screen all you want, but it just takes one person in a year to start that area. I think that it seems a lot of these folks, you can come in and volunteer. That's great. That helps mitigate some of the community divisiveness over this issue, and I appreciate the donating to the fire department. I've been driving past this neighborhood all my life. It's very special. It's very remote, and it's very unique. And I don't think it's meant to be a short-term rental area because of its remoteness, and there's still concerns about who is going to respond with law enforcement. I have a really big concern that it would seem like it was an hour requirement, but the owners were going to be the managers, and I know they fixed that, but still it just shows me overall kind of the lack of awareness of the importance of why these regulations are there is for the response time. And so I have a lot of concerns about really the authenticity of trying to make sure that they really mean what they say when they want to be neighbors and be a part of this. And I appreciate that you've given back. I'm not trying to challenge. I think you're a great person. Sounds like you're really trying to get along with your neighbors. But this is really an issue with a lot of neighborhoods, especially people that live there a long time and have people who buy homes and move in and turn them into short-term rentals, and kind of in that valley, I know it can really carry the noises up there. We were up there for an awards for recognition of the road being just rebuilt, and so I feel like that community just feels they've got their lives back and their neighborhood back, and now they have another thing to talk about. So I have a lot of concerns about this being an appropriate area for short-term rentals, and so I will not be supporting this application. But I do understand that I will probably not be in the majority on this, so I do appreciate, Commissioner Stevens, that you are going to make some extra conditions of approval. That at least makes it a little more palatable for me, but I still think it's, with the water situation, the wildfire, and the remoteness of this is not an appropriate place for a short-term rental, so thank you. So with that, I'll ask Commissioner Stevens, since it seems we are done with deliberation, to make that motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Alvarado short-term rental file number 23, zone 3505, subject to the conditions listed in our packet, with the additional condition that the applicants must install a noise monitor.
Thank you, and I just want to make one other comment. I understand you both think they met the criteria 1 and 2. I do not think they adequately met criteria 1 and 2, in my opinion. So I just want to state that for the record. So with that, Commissioner Kafalis, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll vote. Okay. All those in favor of Commissioner Stevens' motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. All right. We'll move on to our next item, which is the Jacobson short-term rental file number 23-ZONE 3448. And I will have, I'm assuming Mr. Christensen is presenting on this one.
Actually, this item will be presented by
Miss-
Justin Curry with our
Hi,
planning
Justin.
division.
Thank you, Justin. We'll let you get started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. As mentioned, my name is Justin Curry, and I will be presenting on the Jacobson short-term rental. This is location. It's in at 564 Aspen Drive in Lyons, Colorado. Again, in the Big Elk Meadows subdivision, which is located northwest of the incorporated area of Lyons, Colorado. The request, this is an administrative special review for a 2-bedroom plus 1 additional sleeping area for a total of 6 guests, short-term rental in an existing home. The property owner and applicant is Corey and Kathleen Jacobson. The current zoning is the O open, and the lot size of just under a half acre at 0.45 acres. Utilities and access that are available to the site. It has an on-site well and on-site septic. Is within the Big Elk Volunteer Fire Department, and access is West County Road 47 or Big Elk Meadows Road, depending what you call it. Within the Larimer County Land Use Code, I will provide that. Sorry, I should have said this before. This application was submitted prior to the update of the June 1st short-term rental regulations, so it is under the quote-unquote old code, old land use regulations. An STR is classified as a commercial lodging facility and is permitted in the open zoning district following the administrative special review process. The neighbor notification was 145 postcards were mailed to property owners. We received 15 written comments, 12 in opposition, 2 in support, and 1 just had a general process or general question about why they received a postcard. And all the community member comments are included in the staff report as attachment E. Included this graphic here is a screenshot of our existing short-term rental, existing short-term rental structures, excuse me. You see this is the location of the proposed short-term rental. And just for, I guess, some scale and reference, this buffer or this circle here is that 500-foot separation. That doesn't apply to this one, but just kind of give you some reference of the scale and the size of the area. And with the 1 existing short-term rental in the subdivision currently. In reviewing the proposed admin special review application, the director shall consider the general approval criteria in 638D, which includes the proposed has a minimal impact on existing and future development. Any impacts associated with environment, wildfire, access, traffic, et cetera, have been adequately addressed and or mitigated. Recommendations of referral agencies have been considered and adequately addressed. If it's not within the GMA, so that does not apply, and then the applicant has demonstrated that the project can meet applicable additional criteria listed in Article 3, which is this next section here. And there's, excuse me, this shows it comply with all the following standards included in this slide. The admin special review process authorizes the director to approve applications by which all criteria are met and there are no substantive issues. If the director determines that the application is unusually complex or raises potentially unique or serious impacts in the county, the director may refer the application to the Board of County Commissioners for decision. The proposed admin special review for the short-term rental meets criteria in Section 3 and meets 3 out of the 5 criteria section, with staff not having conclusive determination on criteria 1 and criteria 2. Therefore, the development services team has not made a specific recommendation for the Jacobson short-term rental and has presented all the information by which the Board of County Commissioners may base their deliberation and decision on. And those can be the motion to deny the short-term rental, and or approve the short-term rental with the following conditions applied. They're detailed as well in the staff report. And if staff has any questions, or have you any questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Curry, for your presentation. Colleagues, do you have any questions at this time for Mr. Curry? Okay, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. If we can have Mr. Jacobson come forward and identify himself, he'll have 10 minutes for his presentation.
Hello again. Okay, so my name is Corey Jacobson. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself to get started on this. Do you mind if I stand back a little bit from this?
Sure.
So my name is Corey Jacobson. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I went to high school in northern New Jersey. I got on the Appalachian Trail, started fishing quite a bit back then, hiking quite a bit back then. I went to Penn State for recreation and parks management. The last thing I ever wanted was a job in an office. I wanted to be outside, to introduce people to the wildlife, to take them on hikes, show them everything. I should say that hasn't actually exactly happened for me, though I've worked in the outdoors industry for quite a while. I did work in the outdoors industry for quite a while. But beyond there, this is my property, 564 Aspen Drive. It is a cabin that I bought from a wholesaler about a year and a half ago or so, probably a year and 4 months. This place was in a state of disrepair when I got it. It probably could have been condemned, but I worked with the contractor, got it back up and running. Thank you. So the first slide you're seeing here is I've got a dumpster. I went through 4 of them, loaded them completely and totally up. Bottom left, I got a couple mice. That's 2 of hundreds that were probably taken out of there. You can see at the top middle picture, I had to get rid of the flooring, like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of flooring. The reason behind that is the bottom right picture. That is what the underside of the carpet looked like, because the people that owned the property before me had dogs that did not leave the deck to go to the bathroom. They either went inside or outside. And the top right was just how dirty the light switches were, because they smoked a lot in that place. So it looks completely different. I'm not sure what the next slide is, but this is what it looks like outside when I bought it on the left, the top left, and the bottom right, the border around it is what it currently looks like. So you'll notice there's a lot of trees gone. I actually took out 13 trees because I could reach off my deck and touch them, and I'd rather, if there were going to be a fire, give myself the best chance of surviving that. You'll also notice maybe that there's a new roof on top of this thing. There's also gravel on the driveway. I had to get the driveway dug up from the street all the way up to the house because over the previous winters, the pipe had burst on numerous occasions, and they were out there in the middle of the winter digging it up to repair it. So I think I'll make that better going forward, if you don't mind. And there's just a bunch of pictures in here of, again, before pictures, after pictures of what it looks like then and now. Here you go again. And you can see the trees that were out there on the bottom left. They're all gone again now. And you can go again, view of the kitchen, a couple of views of the kitchen. There's a lot of people were commenting on how everybody, or it seemed to me when I was reading these, that everybody that is a short-term renter is a bad person or bad, like it's not the way to go. But these are just reviews that I have from my own personal, I think, Airbnb account. Like, great guest, joy to work with, clean. Like, I left places in better condition when I got there. I don't think I'm the only person that does this, but that's hopefully the kind of person I'm going to get in this place. And with that, other issues that came up, I just told you that I took out, or I dug the water line down 4 feet deep across the place. I've got gravel in the driveway. There's a new roof on the place. I had 13 trees taken out. Most of them were, within touch, like I could reach them from the house. As far as water conditions go, like you're right, there is a concern for it. My system in the house has a depressurizer on it. I think that's what it's called. And quite honestly, it's because when I put my hand under the water, there was a lot of water coming out, and I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be there like that for everybody else that was coming up. I don't know what needs to happen as far as giving access to people. Like, I only want people to have access to the main living area, but I know they need to have access to the water. I don't want them to have access to the water because I don't want the hose going on outside and just wasting water that way. But I'll probably talk to Justin about that one at some point. Let's see. Is it possible to go to the other deck? So again, I went recreation parks management, so I wanted to be outside. You'll see on my pictures that come up that most of the time I spend up there, I'm working. Like I'm at the house, mowing the lawn, clipping bushes, clipping bushes, cutting up logs, painting, doing anything. But I spend a little bit of time driving around, taking pictures, and appreciating where I am. So if you guys haven't been up there, I'd highly recommend it. It's a beautiful place. But I've got pictures of moose, elk, one of the two bears that I've seen up there, a mountain lion paw right on my driveway. Which I got to be honest, that's the one thing that really scares me about people staying up there, because I've come face to face with two mountain lions, probably from me to the attorney away, and they were ready to pounce on me when I was out climbing. I've also come face to face, probably from me to the microphone, maybe the other side of the podium here, with a black bear when I was much, much younger, but thankfully I'm still here. And I just need to make sure, when I say that, I need to do something in my owner's manual to make sure that they understand and appreciate that. The fact that they're going to be out there, you do not want to get up early in the morning, go running. You do not want to be out late. And I know that was a concern to some people. And again, my top concern. There's one other thing that is in my manual that I need to change, and that is the property manager. When I was talking to a house cleaner, and he said, "Hey, I'll do that for you. I'll take on the property management. You can just, if there's ever a problem, I'll go down there." I don't want to do that. I live in Longmont. It's 1009 Tony Place. It's about 40 minutes away if you look at Google Maps, and I'll take it. And I'll be on there. My name, like David said, is in the manual, so anybody that has a problem, or if there's any problems, they can look in there, call me. I'll send them a postcard, give them whatever they need to get in touch. And one other thing I've got on here is just the sound sensors. I was going to wait until this was over before buying them, but I do intend to put that up because I don't want to make life miserable for any of my neighbors. Everybody I've met's been great. And I'm good.
So you have a couple minutes left. Just want to make sure you have your full applicant time if you'd like.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, colleagues, currently, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Commissioner Stevens?
I'll just wait until after public
Okay,
comment.
Commissioner Kofalis?
Yes, I have one question for the applicant. Thank you, Corey. In the material that we received, I don't believe I saw where our wildfire partner program manager came and did an inspection to determine if, as far as a wildfire home ignition zone, addressing any concerns, mitigating any concerns. Did that happen, or what's
For outside?
Yeah.
So when you say the guy came by, you're talking the Big Elk Meadows guy?
I'm talking about the Larimer County Wildfire Partner Program Manager.
That has not taken place in that case.
Pardon?
I don't believe that's taken place in that case.
Okay. I'm curious, isn't from staff, if I may, isn't that a normal thing we do, especially in areas where there are concerns about wildfires?
Yes, that is correct. We usually send out for referral the wildfire to take a look. I have to dig in through the comments and see if they've responded or if they've done that yet, that they were included in the referral. But yeah, as I said, that's
if you could check into that, please, because
Yes.
I don't see that. Generally, they'll come out and take a look, and if they identify things that need to be mitigated, they'll, like you had mentioned on your own initiative, you had taken out 13 trees that you could.
And I don't know, it doesn't matter in this respect, I suppose, but the Big Elk Meadows fire chief came out and looked at the place. He looked over and he's like, "Hey, this looks great." And he encouraged me. He's like, "Yeah, you can go 300 yards behind your house and take out some more if you want to." So, but he was very happy with the status of it. But
That's helpful. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, I have a question for staff. I saw here in the comments from neighbors that this had maybe been already without a license renting out to short-term rental folks, and so is that So we had gotten complaints about that, or?
So I believe the comments you received, I think there was another email, I believe it's from a woman named Elaine. I thought she said there was like confusion. It was another one that she thought was this one, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't see that other one.
Yeah, I
Okay,
thought
that
included- Yeah,
helps.
so there was, she emailed back, so it wasn't an existing one, but she still had some concerns, but it was
Okay.
not from her, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. I just want to make sure that I had read that and make sure that I had understand that. Okay. And we don't know why we don't have a ignition zone. I mean, you had asked, but I wanted to hear it again. We just,
Yeah, not that I was looking through it. Usually, like I said, they are required they get notified as part of the referral agencies for short-term rentals to do that inspection. And I didn't have one in my comment folder. Doesn't mean I could have missed it in email, or I'm just in double checking soon to see if it was, if they weren't missed in the referral or they were just didn't respond.
okay, thank you. Okay, let's open public comment. So do we have anyone signed up for public comment for this? I think Ms. Torrey was probably signed up for this one as well.
That's correct. I believe she signed up for both.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed, come up, and for the record, just because it's a formal area, please identify yourself where you live, and you'll have 3 minutes for public comment. Thank you.
My name is Tori DeVore, and I'm a part-time resident up at Big Elk Meadows. And I want to clarify a couple of things. There are actually 4 applications, including the 2 here, currently in the process, and 4 inquiries. 1 came in last week. So there's a lot of going on, and I really appreciate your comments, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, about Big Elk not being an appropriate location. We are very remote. And so when you said that, it brought a couple of things to mind. There is no cell service to our establishment, and it is, I don't know how many miles, 5 to 8 miles from 36. So if there's any issues on the road, which there has been, and coming into the facility, and our operations manager had to pull somebody out from the other short-term rental that's been licensed. Hiking trails can be dangerous, especially in the springtime, but we as residents know that, and we know how to get through something, with those spring runoff and things like that. So it's not, we're not a resort. We're not set up for this, and even members sometimes have accidents on our hiking trails and such. But we know things like you always carry whistles with you and so on. So our community isn't geared for short-term rentals and support of short-term rentals. A lot of our people are also fixed income, so some people say, well, then just raise the dues and put in some more infrastructure to help, this sort of thing. And we really try and curtail that and curb it. We did have a vote on short-term rentals. I can't remember what year. We first sent out a survey. The majority came back saying they did not want short-term rentals. We put through a vote. When the board got the ballot, they worded it what I call inside out. So that what had to happen is we had to vote yes to limit short-term rentals, and it confused a lot of our members. So we were never sure that the membership actually voted the way they wanted to. Sent out another vote, but that vote we were vote weary, and we didn't get responses back, just like you don't get responses back on your 145 postcards, although the Facebook page lights up with all kinds of comments, and I write back to them and say, did you send an email? So it's a unique community, and so I'm not sure with criteria 1 and criteria 2, Commissioner Wallace, Mr. Stevens, what it would take for you to say, hey, we're not meeting these, but I hope you all get on the same page in terms of what does the criteria actually mean. It is a little bit ambiguous in the wording, so I'm not sure myself, but I really agree with you, Commissioner, that it's not a place for short-term rentals. Thanks.
Thank you for your public comment. I don't think that, excuse me a second. Not to sneeze. Do we have anybody online?
Bless you. We do have one hand raised online, and I'll just remind those again who are watching or listening on Zoom, if you use that raise hand button on your Zoom control bar, you can indicate that you would like to speak and provide a comment at this time. For now, we have one hand raised, and that is Nancy Sterner.
Thank you, Ms. Sterner. This is Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shai McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for your willingness to engage in public comment. Would you please unmute yourself, speak into the mic, into your device, and identify yourself where you live. You'll have 3 minutes for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nancy Sterner, and I live in Denver, Colorado, and I own the property at 536 Aspen Drive, which is next to the proposed short-term rental. My family has been a part of Big Elk community since 1980. I would like to reiterate my strong opposition with a couple of facts to consider. Our understanding is that a buffer zone is required between an STR and adjacent residences. There is less than 30 feet distance between our structures. And according to Larimer County Land Information Locator and historical knowledge we have of our property, the structure of the proposed STR extends over the property line, making trespassing inevitable. This is a glaring issue that should not be overlooked. The lack of clear boundary raises security concerns, especially considering we are full-time owners but part-time residents. We don't have the opportunity to consistently monitor activity on our property, and will be left holding the bag with no options for accountability if something should happen. As members of Big Elk, we have already faced natural threats of fires and floods, and an influx of uninformed, inexperienced, unsupervised, and unchecked renters is an unnecessary risk to our immediate property. We will not be willing to expose our property to the vulnerabilities that a short-term rental will bring, and respectfully ask that this application be denied. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Sterner, for your public comment. Okay, now we'll move on. Is there anyone else that has their hand raised online?
Just giving it a moment. There are no additional hands raised. So I believe that is it.
Okay. Well, we will now, no hands raised. Okay. So we'll close public comment. Okay, so, would you like to make public comment on this?
Yes.
Okay, please come up. You have 3 minutes.
Hello again. My name's David Alvarado, and obviously you guys just heard me speak a short time ago. This is would like to say that I am in support of Corey and his short-term rent application, and this is primarily not just because he's a short-term rental co-applicant, or however you want to say it, but it's more to do with his character and his the conversations that we've had, and in communicating to learn how to do it right, and also knowing that that he is going to be involved frequently up in the neighborhood. He's not going to be an absentee owner, according to our conversations. In fact, both of us have talked about how we are going to have withdrawals if we're not up there and able to be up there every single weekend. And it's important for us to have a good finger on the pulse of what's going on. But more importantly, it's just that his attitude and outlook towards making continuous improvements, as well as being on the board with our HOA, providing good input, both good and bad, of our own experiences to help develop and refine and make the process a better outcome for everybody in the neighborhood. He is that type of person that is okay to be wrong and fix his mistakes. And I think this board, this ad hoc committee in the neighborhood, is a great method of doing that. That's all.
Thank you for your public comment. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll now close public comment. Okay, so now, Mr. Jacobson, you'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
So I'm going to keep it really quick and just, again, I'm looking forward to hopefully moving forward with this. And to Nancy, if this gets approved, I'd like to touch base with you and figure out what we can do between our properties. I realize there's not a lot of space in there, but I can't imagine you'd want to put a fence in there. I could roll rocks down so people can see the line. That could be right now there's a piece of rebar in the back of the property, a piece of rebar in the front of the property. Put strings between them, put rocks on it, whatever we can do to make it so that there is a clear delineation of your property versus mine, where you can't go versus where you can't go. And, I suppose that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. So, colleagues, do you have any questions for the applicant or with staff? Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I guess my first question for staff is there's no buffer zone required, is there? It seems like we have.
Correct. Not for this application, since this application was submitted prior to June 1st of this year, when that 500 buffer separation came into rules, or it became part of the guidelines. So example, Mr. Alvarado's STR was approved, so now there is a 500-foot separation from his property from all future applications.
But there's no buffer between just a neighbor.
Correct.
Right.
Not currently, no.
Okay, so that's
Beyond the
kind
zoning
of
setbacks and things like that.
That's what Nancy, I think, was asking about. Like her property is close to this property, and that there's no required buffer between houses.
Correct.
Okay. And then my question for the applicant is around. So I think one of the questions was around how will people know that they're allowed to maybe fish or be able to be at the swimming pool? Is there any sort of, there was some concern about how would we know if people were allowed to be there? Will they have a token or something like that? So
Yeah,
could you maybe address that?
Yeah. My thought on this was initially I was going to try to say no to anybody that's coming out there, but quite honestly, if I was going out there, I'd see 5 lakes and I'd want to go fishing. So since everybody that's going to be coming there is going to be charged by the HOA $12, $13, $15 for the night, I'm going to give them all the access to the facilities. So that's going to be like fishing. I'm going to ask the same thing David is, like catch and release. And then the swimming pool, there's a medallion that you have to take and just swipe it to get into it.
Okay. When you say, so there hasn't been a lot of talk about this, but the charging of short-term rent, is that for any kind of guest that comes into the community? Was that rule specifically for short-term rentals?
Specific for short-term rental.
Okay, so, I mean, okay. So there again, there's not a lot of clarity around this ballot and this vote, but I mean, by virtue of having something in sort of a HOA that says that there would be a charge per night, it sort of assumes that they are allowed. I mean, is that a correct assumption?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have. I don't know if anybody else has things in the.
Commissioner Kofalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Corey. I wonder if you could specifically respond to the matter that Tori raised about that there's no cell service up there. That would be a bit of a concern as far as if there's a disaster emergency or anything like that. How are people notified?
Sure. So my property has Wi-Fi tied to it, so as long as the people get in, attach themselves to Wi-Fi, they can get in there. If they're a half mile away, there's no cell service.
And maybe staff or someone, could you remind us of how our LIDA operates in an area where there's no cell phone service, our notification system? Don't want to make it too easy for you all.
I'm gonna look around the room. We've got 4 four staff up here who have been with the county less than a year and are less familiar with how LIDA operates. I don't know if we have others that may be able to answer that question. Alan, you want to come up? Thank you.
Before Alan does get up there, I did not receive any comments from LIDA. So I did not receive any comments from LIDA. They were one of the referral agencies. They didn't send any. So, but Alan.
Hello, Alan. If you could identify yourself and which department you're with, thank you.
Yes, my name is Alan Key. I'm with the Code Compliance Department. I am the inspector for this area. As far as LIDA is concerned, as long as they come in and sign up for LIDA, as long as the guidelines are in the owner's manual, it would be able to operate over the Wi-Fi with the Wi-Fi callback.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, so staff, I just wanted to ask, I know that we're operating under the old code, and there's new code, we put in barriers for a reason, or buffer zones, because we had so many folks in neighborhoods that were getting lots of short-term rentals, and we have, as a board, considered density and amount of short-term rentals in a neighborhood with 150 homes, and that's not a very big neighborhood, and so that was something we can and did consider under the old code as a discretionary thing as commissioners about the impact and density and closeness with short-term rentals to each other. Is that, as maybe Frank, since he was here in the past, am I correct, or is that because we had that discretion to consider the impacts? If that was part of the criteria 1 and 2 was the density and the impacts on neighbors because they're close, or the density of having several in a neighborhood.
I don't think criteria 1 and 2 that are before you today refer specifically to density, but they talk about impacts on the neighborhood. And so you cannot apply the new code requirements. You have to stick to the ones that are there. But to the extent that you feel like the density is impacting the neighborhood, then that would be something that you could consider.
Okay, and that's something we have done in the past. So just want to be clear because people, I think, are confused with the new and the old. Before, we would also still consider the impacts on the existing and future neighborhoods, and I think that was something that we had thought about before. So
I think that's right. I think with the new one, you would have to get an exception. It says you have to have 500 feet separation, so you wouldn't even be able to apply absent having some kind of an appeal for that requirement. So that's what's different about the future one.
okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Also, it seems that we've had, with this application, there was 15 written comments out of the 145, so about 10% came back, and 12 were in opposition and 2 were support. I was just curious to the applicant, have you reached out to your neighbors and talked to them about this? You haven't talked to Nancy, your next door neighbor, yet. Have you reached out to any of the neighbors that had some concerns other than the letter of response to the online comments?
I have not reached out to most of them. And Nancy, I figure when I go up there, I'm up there every weekend, probably, I'd say 3.5 weekends a month. And it's I don't know, few and far between that I see her up there or see someone occupying the neighbor's house. But no, the other ones I haven't. I mean, I've met anybody that's walked by while I'm outside working. I wave to them, we talk to them. But for the first several months I was there, everybody was commenting on how much better the place looked because it was pretty run down earlier. So no, I haven't reached out to them. A lot of it, like, again, a lot of it seems to be like not trusting short-term renters, and I don't have that issue. Like I look at people as being good. Like that's just the way I approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's right, thank you. Don't need to be sorry, just asked a question, he answered, thank you. Okay, I think that's all I have for right now. So, colleagues, any other questions? Okay, well then I guess we'll go into deliberation. Since I started with Commissioner Gonzalez first last time, I'll start with you, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, so I'm inclined to support this application. Again, I think that there's a lot of, I've read through all the emails. I've listened to, the people who've come to speak today. There does seem to be a lot of discrepancies around whether people do want short-term rentals in this community or don't. And so it's really hard to parse that out. I mean, I don't know if, people misunderstood the ballot. I don't know why people didn't vote a second time. It seems like that there is a fee for short-term rentals. So there was to me, that shows that there's some assumption that there would be some short-term rentals. And if the community had this conversation about this to allow them, it seems like that, and now is having a committee to create rules. Like I said, I really encourage that because I do feel like there's a lot of differing opinions on whether they're allowed and encouraged or not allowed. And so, but I do feel, and I think Tori was asking about the review criteria, and we have criteria, and it, we try to weigh this, and I agree that maybe the community wants to set a cap, and we certainly have some rules. One thing I was going to ask staff, are any of these, do we have a map that would show like the last one we approved and the one that's already in place and the third one that would show how close those are? Because I do think density is a concern, that you don't want to have too many in a neighborhood, and it's why we created new rules, but we aren't under those new rules either. So,
Yes, give me one second. I have a screenshot of the
That'll
existing. Yeah, that'll help a little bit, give some context.
thank you, I appreciate that.
So yeah, again, this is a screenshot of that our existing short-term rental map that we have, and there's this orange dot here with the one we have existing. The one that was just recently approved is roughly across the lake over here, and then this is the one that's the application for you today. And so, and then for a little bit of scale, this circle here is that applied 500-foot buffer, and so like you can say it's roughly 1,200 to 1,500 feet away from the existing one, and probably similar to the one just approved. Has to go through the process and get into our software and our network, and then they'll be updated on the map, and there'll be 3 dots there or 2 dots, and then if this one's approved, 3.
Thank you. Thank you for showing that. I think that's really helpful. I do think that the concerns that have been expressed can be mitigated, and I would ask that we, in the approval, have a condition of requiring that noise monitor. I would also encourage the applicant to talk to, especially your next door neighbor when you can. Try to set up a meeting and see what you can do. Maybe they can call you specifically, because if they're right next door, that's it. That is pretty close, and so any kind of noise would be a concern. But so anyway, I do think that that there's that the concerns can be mitigated, and so I would be voting in approval of this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am inclined to support the application. I have a few more reservations about this one than the previous one. Each one is separate. I think the density issue is valid. It looks like if this is to be approved, there would be 3 short-term rentals out of about 160 homes, I think, that are in that neighborhood, and that, by my math, arithmetic, that comes out to about 1.8% of the homes at this time. And I'm encouraged that there is a group with HOA that is going to look at all these issues and ultimately try to determine a good policy for what level of coexistence can occur between folks who live there and folks who want to have guests, short-term rental guests. So I'm inclined to support it. It is true that those first 2 criteria, what's it going to take, they are a bit vague, and that's one of the things we're trying to address in the updated short-term rental regulations, to make the criteria that pertain to short-term rental regulations much more objective as much as possible. So, but that of course takes anything after June 1st. Those regulations would apply. So with that, I would support this. Oh, in addition to the sound sensor device, I'd also like to add condition of approval that to ensure that the the home ignition zone inspection occur, and that the homeowner passes that inspection.
And I can address some of that right now, sorry. We did send the referral to the Big Elk Meadows Fire District, Volunteer Fire District, and we didn't receive comments back, excuse me. And so we're not, I know we have like the third party one that does it. We're not required to send to them when the property is within a fire district. And so that's why that one wasn't done. But they can volunteer to, yeah, like you said, have that done.
But we also have our own county person who does wildfire inspections, and and just as in the previous one that was conducted, I'd like for the county to ensure that this property is as safe as one can be in such an area. So I'd like to add that.
Okay. So I appreciate the colleagues adding, it sounds like two different conditions of approval. I have even more concerns about this one than I did before the other one because of the proximity to the neighbors. It sounds like they're less than 100 feet from each other, and I see this could lead to a lot of possible interactions. Even with putting up a fence, then you're kind of taken away from your neighbors. It's kind of nice to have this openness. So if you're going to put up fence or rock or a thing, it just kind of adds more to the isolation. And I think it leads to a lot of issues with having the neighbors having to police folks coming in. And we've had a lot of folks who have been up in Estes Valley and others where people have walked onto their property. So I know that's really an issue. I feel there's a lot more opposition to this neighborhood, and I know a lot of them sound just generalized, but also it sounds like a lot of these people lived up there year round, and I think as we're looking at this, if there's 4 more of this quickly can be a very dense area, and I think adding a couple more is going to be it's a place the noise is going to carry, and if they're all renting at the same time, I can see how the neighbors could feel this could be very impactful to the existing neighborhoods. I also have a concern with this is a very dense wildlife area and a wildfire risk area, and they have been very much impacted by the fires and the floods, and they just recovered. And I think the neighborhood is just able to finally take a sigh of relief, and I can see why they have concerns about short-term rentals coming into their area. I appreciate the work that you've done on your home. I think that's fantastic. It's an investment that you're making into this place, and that you can stay there. And so I think that also is just not only for you and your family, and I appreciate your love of outdoors and wanting to be outdoors. It looks like a very nice place, and obviously helped already your neighbors have some aesthetics improved. And I appreciate the work that you have done to remove the trees, and obviously you have some background in that. So I think you already recognize the worried of that. This is not anything personal. I just think where your house is considered and closer to those others, I think there's a lot more possibility for negatively impacting the neighbors. It's very close, and the noise carries like that in that area with the valley. And so I just feel that it does not meet criteria 1 because it impacts the existing neighborhood, and I have concerns about the criteria 2 about noise and having more people driving on the road, and also you talked about the wildlife there, and I think that's leading to more of a risk for residents as well as people renting your place. I think there's a certain way that some of these remote areas are not great for folks to come who are not aware of the wildlife risk and come up to rent these places, and then they put the wildlife lives at risk because if a bear gets in their trash or has a native interaction or the mountain lion, then they're now at risk of being on a list to be euthanized or in trouble or get sick. There was one, I think a bear or something in Mountain Lion just ate a bunch of trash and they couldn't digest it and they had to put it down because it got into the trash. So that was on the news. And so I just think that for me, this just feels still kind of the wrong area. I don't feel like it meets the criteria, and so I will not be supporting this application. Thank you. So Commissioner Kafals, it seems I appreciate both of you making those conditions of approval, and I will ask for you to make that motion, please.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who's here in person and online. I move that the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners approve the Jacobson short-term rental file number 23-zone 3448, subject to the 14 conditions of approval that were included in our packet, and adding 2 more conditions of approval, one requiring a sound sensor device, and 2, an additional one requiring a home ignition zone inspection by the county, and ensuring that that inspection is that the homeowner passes that inspection.
Thank you, Commissioner, for making those motions. Any further discussion? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Passes 2-1, and at 5:06, we have no further business on our agenda. We are adjourned. Thank you.